British culture is revered around the world. It's one of the only things we've got that we export well, and like, why wouldn't you protect that? They do everything right, and the council or whatever the powers that be that remain say this person wants to turn it into a car park or a block of flats that are going to sit empty, which is a travesty. There could be people in that room who could have had their lives changed at like 40 quid a ticket, 50 quid, that weren't able to be there. That's not something I would do, but it's hard. Should I condemn Muse?
Hello and welcome back to The Alternative with me, Dylan, here on Shoreditch Radio. And today I'm joined here in the studio by a very special guest. Tigercub are one of the hottest bands on the alt-rock scene these days, gaining a cult following for their huge sound, raw energy and infectious stage presence. They are hot off their near sellout set at Coco in Camden last month, and as we record this, we are days away from the release of their next studio album, Nets to Catch the Wind, being billed as their most unrestrained and cinematic work to date. To talk all things Tigercub, I am joined today by the band's iconic frontman and guitarist, Jamie Hall. Jamie, thank you so much for making the time out to visit us today in East London. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. What an intro.
Thank you.
Iconic, don't worry.
You are truly iconic, and I truly mean like the iconic stage presence too. And we'll talk more about Coco and the incredible set that you had there. But as I said, we are days away from the release of your fourth album. Mm-hmm. Talk me through how you're feeling. Like, is it anticipation, and what's going through your head as we gear up to the release of the record?
Yeah, man, what a lovely intro. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Very nice. I feel good. I feel very excited. It's been quite a long lead up. So we announced the record in November 25. Mm-hmm. So it's been like a full on rollout. A lot of building up, almost to the point where it felt like it would never come. It was just always this like thing that was just off in the distance that we'd eventually get to at some point, and now we're here. And I'm just really excited for everyone to listen to the songs. We've got quite a tight-knit like TC community, I guess, on Discord, and we've got like a chat group on Instagram that's got like 250 people in, which we're all like, we have access to, so we can like perv on everyone. Do you know what I mean? We can like check the messages, which is so silly. It's nice though. It's like opening the door to a room full of people that are saying you're brilliant. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that must be brilliant.
But you've got like an invisibility cloak, so you can listen back to it all. But yeah, it's doing great. Like, we've sold out of vinyl. We did that Coco show, which is the most tickets we've ever sold for a live show before. So we're just kind of like breaking our own personal records. So it's gone really great, and we feel like grateful that we're.
Nice. We'll get back to all things new record and all things the show in a moment. But before that, I just want to I'd like to have a quick introduction to the listeners at home, those who are watching. Are you able to just sort of run through, for those unfortunate souls that haven't yet heard any Tigercub, like what genre do you operate in? What's the sound? What makes Tigercub tick?
Okay. So if you haven't heard Tigercub before, I would say it's sort of Deftones adjacent, heavy cinematic rock. We're very conscious of like, pop song structures, and we want there to be like a lot of melody. But I'm very, very interested in like contradictory elements that can fit together in a sort of complementary way. So, there'll be sort of diatonic melody and stuff that from pop music, but there'll also be these like winding chromatic riffs and like a lot of chaos that's usually like planted at this like just so moment. Hopefully that makes sense.
That does make sense. And you mentioned Deftones there. Like, what would you cite as other influences for a band?
Well, it's really hard to like be in a rock band in this day and age and like not be influenced in some way by Queens of the Stone Age, and that's a reference that we get thrown up a lot. We're obviously influenced by Queens of the Stone Age. Like Muse is a reference that gets thrown up towards us a lot as well. And yeah, like the first 3 records, especially the first 3 records, I definitely think that's like a really good blend of like Rage Against the Machine, Queen, Radiohead, and just it's just a really good, smart, like Yes and stuff like that. It's like quite progressive. It's really good, smart, but still like emotive blend that those guys put together. As well as, you know, classics like Nirvana and like the obvious things. We're quite influenced by, I am personally, like Echo and the Bunnymen and like a lot of like art rock, post-punk stuff, Chameleons, like Killing Joke.
That's fair. I saw in preparing for this interview that someone likened you to Led Zeppelin. Do you agree with that?
I love that. Obviously, they're such an interesting band, man, because they never released singles. They were massive, but like very esoteric. If you sort of take it on face value, take on what their singles are, compared to, I don't know, what people's musical appetites must have been around the same time. You know, you got fucking like ABBA and stuff. I hope I can swear. You gonna bleep that out?
Yeah, we're fine.
Said flipping.
No, you're right.
Yeah, quite wildly esoteric. I'm a massive fan of Led Zeppelin, and the thing that, in my opinion, makes Zeppelin heavy and work is like the rhythm section as opposed to the guitars. So like, yeah, like through listening to Led Zeppelin and trying to emulate Led Zeppelin, I went on like a sort of a journey of discovery, of like figuring out what actually makes a song feel heavy and weighty, and it's usually in the rhythm section. It's not in the guitars. So I guess like we definitely take cues from Zeppelin with like the John Bonham, John Paul Jones side of things, like making up the larger proportion of like the heaviness of the sound, and the guitar just being more of like the bite that sits on top. So yeah, being compared to Zeppelin is really nice.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But so let's go back to the beginning of the band. How did the 3 of you meet, and how did the band form?
Yeah, so I moved to Brighton when I was 18 from Sunderland 3 years ago, which makes me 21. It's fucking. Can you cut that out, please?
No, definitely not. That's definitely going in.
Is that the pull quote?
Yes, absolutely.
So I do it to myself. So I met James at uni in Brighton. James is our drummer, and then we were called Objet d'Art for a while, which is
interesting.
A really funny name because we're pretentious, but it's still quite sort of heavy, but like more sort of indie leaning.
I see.
And then the bass player that we formed Tigercub with quit, and Jimmy joined. And then like we just really ended up on this path of like, yeah, heavy, distorted, like, yeah, girthy sort of music that we started to make. And as we progressed like through our careers, I guess, like we ended up doing like bigger stuff and going to America and like seeing like the sort of scale that rock music can sort of be played at over there, and seeing how big like the heavier side of music was. Because like when we first put our singles out and stuff, we were very like Enemy sort of vibes, which is awesome. But we just never saw any like conversion from like skinned students. So when we leaned into the sort of heavier rock thing, we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. And like America's a thing and we can go over there and play. So it just sort of like, yeah, whet our appetite to just start to become more and more like dynamic focused as a band. And you know, it's okay to be as heavy as like Pentagram or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like Metallica or something. That's cool.
Absolutely.
But you can still be like Radiohead on the other end of things. You can still be tasteful. Not that I'm calling those bands distasteful, but it can get a little bit like snooty sometimes with like the indie rock press. And I think after a while we just thought, well, to hell with all that stuff. Let's just like be parabolic in how we flitter from genre to genre. And we've ended up with this like, quite schizophrenically sort of loud, quiet, loud death metal, then Elliott Smith sort of thing.
Yeah, being heavy and sonically interesting at the same time, I think is where you carved yourselves into. And so it's really, really interesting seeing where that's come from and seeing what influences have got you to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So on the topic of sort of history, we are hitting the 10th anniversary of your debut record, Abstract Figures in the Dark, this year. It's a record that's so beloved by your fans. And with such a large gap between it and your next record and the differences in sound, does that feel like a whole different era? And now that we're hitting that milestone, are you bringing stuff from that era to your new music and to what you're performing now?
That's a cool question. It's been 10 years since we released our first record. Yeah, I mean, we're all 10 years older. We're in our like mid to late 30s. We're like blokes now. So it's nice to look back on something we did when we were like, I guess, kids. And it's lovely to see something age and have all the noise around it die down. Ultimately, what you're left with is the record. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's no commentary.
Yeah.
There's just people that either liked it or didn't. And there is this support for the first record. So, I look back on it. The headspace I'm in right now and like my journey as a producer, I look back on it and I think it's a really cool, smeared kind of indie rock record. And obviously what I'm into now is like heavy. Yeah. So I listen back to it and I think, that was cute. You know. But
you can go a lot heavier now.
Yeah, so now I'm just like, let's bury it. let's make it like demonic.
Let's go drop B and just go for it.
Yeah, drop F sharp. The brown note. So yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's the 10-year anniversary. We're going to repress Abstract Figures in the Dark because it's been out of press for about 6 years now.
Nice.
And that's part of Tigercub really is like limited run vinyl, like keeping things exclusive so that like our core fans that like do buy things and do like pre-order things before they've even heard it. I just feel like that's a little bit of like value added back to them and like a way of, I don't know, it's a whole conversation in itself, but just a way of just being like, hey, we love you guys and we appreciate you and we're like deliberately keeping these runs at like 300 to 500 copies or whatever, just so like what you have is like legitimately special.
That's fair.
Because like vinyl's expensive and stuff. It's got like a large carbon footprint and there's loads of stuff, like, you know, there's arguments to be made whether or not we could sell like the big numbers, but it just feels right to keep things like small batch. And we did that with the first record and we've always held true to that throughout our entire career. So because it's a special occasion and the record will have been out for 10 years in like November this year, I think November the 11th is the 10-year anniversary, we'll do a special repressing with like some demos, some extra footage and commentary and stuff from around that time that I'm sure like our core fans would be really interested in. We'll tour it as well.
Nice.
Cool.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And on the topic of doing something quite small scale for your fans and going back to that debut record, and that album was recorded at Brighton Electric, that local studio you've been recording at since your first single. And you recently played, if I'm right, a Halloween show there, including bringing back Elvis from the dead, I hear.
We did it. We excavated his corpse.
A, how was that? And B, like, how important is that studio to who you are as Tigercub?
Oh, it's massively important. Our bass player Jimmy runs that studio. It's a massive like cultural meeting ground of bands in Brighton. The Cure rehearse and record there, which is like wild.
Insane. There's
been times where I've like just been wandering from A to B. And you just look down the corridor and there's just a shock of back-combed hair just like passes past the door with like the bass line to, you know, Just Like Heaven or something. It's like bellowing down the corridor and you're like, this is wild. This is amazing. back in the day. Maccabees used to rehearse there. British Sea Power. I mean, everyone really. Raw Blood recorded loads of their first and second record there, and were just people that were hanging out in the reception, you know. Egyptian Blue. It's like, it is like a little bit of an endless, you know, just, I don't know, I go electric and I'll just be like, well, who's in today? And Jimmy will be like, oh, well, Declan McKenna's in for a little bit. And he's just hanging around.
Yeah.
There's one time the guys from Wire, do you know that old punk band Wire? Mm-hmm. They got this great record called Pink Flag, which they never play. I've been to see them. They never play it. It's really sad. They play all of their like experimental stuff, which is really great, but I love Pink Flag the most. But yeah, you see those guys around, it's like, fuck, man. Yeah. It's so underrated, Brighton Electric, and like so much amazing music has been made there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that in like 15 years time, let's say, there are like people who want to make documentaries about Brighton Electric, because it's just so culturally important, in my opinion, you know, just as a meeting ground. And Jimmy, our bass player, runs that place.
And it's really, really interesting coming from, as a band perspective, as one of you run it. And as we look across the city and across the country, those spaces that bring artists together and where music can sort of collaborate is disappearing almost day by day. I mean, COVID was the big sort of factor in that. Like how important is keeping those spaces alive, but also how difficult is it as someone with like the insight on running these types of spaces? Like what considerations did Jimmy have to make on keeping the doors open at Brighton Electric?
You have to be like cunning and smart, and like, you know, with Electric, the smartest thing they ever did was get like a bar license. And I think like a lot of the time, like the majority of the income that they would make would be from like the tuck shop, you know, selling like Freddos and like Purdy's stuff and Coke cans of, well, Pepsi, because we don't like Coca-Cola, do we? And get, like just stuff like that would be, there'd be enough margin there. And the studio would really just be like a lost leader. That would be like something that doesn't really bring in any money, but it's like this, it has this history to it, which I guess like creates a magnetism for younger bands to want to record there, as well as just like a good service, you know? And like, I imagine in London, it's getting harder and harder and harder to keep places like, I don't know, like the Windmill and stuff like that. And I know Moth Club's under threat at the minute as well. It's hard. It's hard. And, you know, my default is always to be with stuff like that and with groups that, you know, are struggling on tour and stuff. I think at a certain point you do have to give people, you got to like try and find a way to get people to go to these places or care. Yeah. Otherwise it will just fizzle out. Like I don't really believe in charity and that sort of thing. So I kind of think like, well, look, it's our responsibility as artists and stuff to try and push the boundaries and create something that is just creates such value that people can't resist being there, which is a bit weird, you know, and I'm not fully entrenched in that, but that's the way I look at my life, you know, and with stuff that Tigercub does and stuff that I do, it's just like, I have to create value here because I'm competing with whatever, Netflix, X, and all of the horrible stuff on the internet and all the other amazing entertainers that are drawing tickets. And I think mentality-wise, that's a better way to look at it. Like, how can we absolutely own this space? That said, I fully understand that, like, you know, places like Moth Club, they are like that. And they just had, like, Courtney Bartlett. I think she did a set there, and it's revered. They do everything right. And if you still reach that point and the council or whatever the powers that be that remain say, well, look, that's still not enough. This person wants to turn it into a car park or a block of flats that are going to sit empty, which is a travesty. Yeah. That's a complete failing of capitalism. That's a complete failing of society. That's outrageous. We should be rioting in the street to stop that. And like, it blows my mind that like you could have, you know, like you go to Birmingham, there's like sold out walking tours of like Black Sabbath and stuff like that. You go to Liverpool, you can go and visit one of the many houses that John Lennon lived in. You can go to the church where the Quarry Boys met, that has the Eleanor Rigby, whatever it's called, gravestone in the garden. You can have all this stuff which draws tourism and drives revenue for local councils and local governments. You can have all of that, and then this cognitive dissonance with new music coming up.
Yeah.
You got to keep, like, British culture is revered around the world. It's one of the only things we've got that we export well, and like, why wouldn't you protect that? It's just a no-brainer. So when you hear about like these cultural landmarks, and you have to protect even the ones on the fringes, because you never know what's going to become so like just sacrimonious to someone. And people really, really, really care about it.
Yeah.
They'll get on a plane and fly over just to stand in the same spot that like whatever, you know, like the World's End being like a beacon for like the Teddy Boys and stuff like that, and that whole part of Camden and the punk movement. It's like people will travel and pay money to hang there and like bask in the glory of like, you know, the English canon. Not that I'm like patriotic or anything like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, but there's certain parts of Englishness, whatever you would call that. There's certain parts of that where I just think, well, that's great. Let's elevate it.
What do you think is that biggest barrier to what new bands and new music culture coming out the UK, of what's stopping that from becoming something that is able to be like marketed as much as say the greats of before, and like what effects that having on the live music industry, in your opinion?
Well, the industry's completely changed, and I don't think anyone from back in the day could have ever foreseen like how carved out it would get. So it is incomparable, especially to the 80s, which I think is like the most fertile period for music ever. It's incomparable, especially the 90s, because everyone, not only was the industry booming, but everyone was buying their vinyl collection back on CDs, which had just become scaled. There's a massive influx of money into the industry, which is why you end up with like indie labels and people that can go, okay, let's just like try spending $100,000 on My Bloody Valentine. Like maybe it'll work. And then they do, and it changes the world. That economy doesn't exist anymore. It's completely different. So the rules are different. So you can't hold newer artists by those old standards. It's hard. There's a lot of things in new artists' favour at the minute. Like, I feel like the sort of TikTok economy is actually converting now, and you're seeing bands selling out their tours and completely bypassing the gate-kept monoculture outlets like The Enemy or whatever. They just don't need them anymore to be popular. So they have that, but also, you know, that's like a blessing and a curse. I think ultimately, like, I believe that, you know, people that like bad music will also like good music, and like people want to be stunned and wowed and have their lives changed. Like that's why we're all scrolling on our phones, because we're looking for something to make our lives better. So as long as that thing remains, I think it's up to the artist to deliver something of supreme quality that kicks the shit out of like whatever, you know, politicians are saying, or whoever's trying to grab the attention in the attention economy. It's up to us guys to try and like make something of value, you know. And you do see it. The only thing that's like different now, because I'm an old codger, is like you'll be like, oh, who's this new band then? Oh, whatever, Gase or whatever. Oh, okay, this is really cool. Where can I see them? Like Underworld or something? Oh no, they've done the Apollo already or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just like you have this like cottage industry where bands can just be like massive, but like not sort of like just not like global in the same way that groups could be before. It's a bit tangential.
No.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely does make sense. And I want to pick on that sort of, on the point you made on creating value and getting boots into the ground. I think that boots on the ground, sorry. I think that segues into the show at Coco last month. And what I found incredibly impressive was the face value. £18 a ticket.
Yeah.
22.50 plus.
That was a good show for that money, yeah.
And so 3 absolutely incredible acts, including yourselves. Like, how important was it when putting on that show, to basically your fans' affordability? Like, how important was it to make sure that you are delivering such an incredible show, but at that value, that it isn't like gatekeeping or isn't a barrier to fans who can sort of come down from across, like, internationally and come to that, but it's the ticket value is not what is stopping. How important was that when
it was very important. It's very important. I think on a like self-deprecating level, that just felt like comfortable for us because it was a larger room for us to step into. The room that we did before that in London was the Islington Academy. So it's sort of like you're sort of doubling your capacity there within like 2 years or whatever between releases. So there was a little bit of like hedging our bets, just like, if we, what can we do to keep the ticket price down and create this like, this value for fans. And also like, we wanted to like take over Camden for the day. So we ended up having like a billboard near the Harley. We had the show obviously at Coco, and then we had the after party at the Buck's Head. So it just felt like it was a day of Tigercub or whatever. And I think the fact that we could keep the ticket price so low, I just think that's great. That's what you want, isn't it? Like under promise, over deliver, like exceed expectations, and just be like, yeah, this is a fucking good show, man. Like we'll always put on a good show. I feel like that's a really good, like for a band at Tigercub's level, especially because like, you know, we've never been big. We've just been on this like kind of steady ascent. It's never dropped off, but it's not like, you know, it's not like we're going to go to number 1 in the official charts. Maybe that could happen. Like, and that we want to do that. Yeah, of course, like fingers crossed. But being realistic, that probably won't happen. So I just think that makes me happy. That makes me believe in music, like value. That's what we want. This is sick. Oh my God, can you believe this? And, you know, we still charged enough that we could get enough of a fee and like sort of stack the costs so that we could like give a massive production for us at least, you know, do a kabuki drop, have lights and production value. I feel like that's something that's going to keep fans like coming back to us, you know, and being like, what are they going to do next, you know? Yeah. Similar to like, in a very small way, like 9 Inch Nails and stuff. Like if you buy a 9 Inch Nails ticket, like you're going to hear the tunes, but you're also going to be thoroughly entertained. There's going to be some kind of innovative stage plot and lighting that's really creative. I just think that's awesome, you know. So this is our version of trying to sort of play that game.
Yeah, that's fair. And actually, when I was speaking to those fans in the crowd, they definitely appreciated, and that they said that it was indicative of your sort of community first approach to those who listen to you. And then you look at other artists that play. Maybe I'm talking about sort of larger venues, but with orders of magnitude more expensive gigs. I mean, the one that comes to mind is Muse did their surprise set at the O2 Academy in Brixton.
You went to that?
But how expensive were the tickets? So I think so standing it was £140 for standing. And like, I'm a massive Muse fan, but even I was looking, I was like, I don't think I can afford that. Like how damaging do you think that? And so that's just face value. But then you look at even the verified resale platforms and looking at like how much these tickets are going for.
Did they do the dynamic pricing thing?
They didn't. So this is with Muse, like this is face value, and I think it's because they are one of the biggest bands on the planet. And I think that the waiting list when I was looking at tickets, that like I was like 1 minute into the pre-sale, the waiting list is like 22,000 or 200,000 or something ridiculous like that. Like, I'm not surprised that and it sold out instantly.
Yeah.
But it means that only those who can afford to go end up going, or they'll pay even more for resale.
Yeah.
Like, how damaging do you think that would be? How damaging do you think it is for those, like, those music fans that are upcoming, like, just can't, that wouldn't be able to afford that? Like, does that limit their experience in music culture?
Well, yeah, like, on a sort of basic level, there could be people in that room who could have had their lives changed at like 40 quid a ticket, 50 quid, that weren't able to be there. And the people that could afford to be there were there. That's fine. But yeah, like, as sort of culturally, yeah, that limits the impact that moment could have. It's hard to speak on that though, because it's like, it's none of my business really what Muse are charging for tickets, and they are like, you know, they're woven into the fabric of like British culture, and to play a show to 5,000 people really is like, that's like 10%, maybe less, of like what they're capable of providing, like, for people. That's not something I would do, but the world of touting and ticket aggregation is like, it's this whole separate thing. Who knows what's going on? Maybe there's relationships that erode back to certain promoters and stuff. You do have these situations in a band where, like, you know, certain promoters do take a chance on you and they will lose money on you, like, over and over again.
Yeah.
Until they don't. And then it's just a feeding frenzy. And then, like, you know, I would like to think that, like, the profits that promotions companies make on the larger bands are writing off debts from the bands that are still coming up, because there is a teething process and stage that's like necessary for bands to scale up. It costs money. You have to kind of be at a loss for a certain period of time before it like balances out. But when it does, it's like, you know, it's providing wages for crews of people, and, you know, the whole, like, the local community around a venue, like around Brixton or whatever, like, benefits. All the pubs, off licenses, things like that, you know, they benefit from the extra footfall. It is hard. It's hard. Should I condemn Muse?
No, I'm not asking to condemn Muse, but it's interesting you said that it's not something that you would do, and that's why I was so impressed with how affordable you made those tickets. So really useful to get that perspective. Let's now turn to the new album, what we're all here for, Nets to Catch a Wind. And as we record this, we are days away on Friday. It comes out. Yep. So can we just talk me through the main themes of the album, and how is it different to what came before it, and what can fans expect from the record?
Cool, man. Yeah. So I always look for like counterpoint when I'm looking for like an album theme. As Blue as Indigo is like sort of about like the perception of colour and wondering whether, like, you know, what I view as red, we all agree that it's red, but do we see the same colour, and just like trying to bounce off that and see whether or not, yeah, there's isolation wrapped up in that. There's just so many wider like things you can pull from a concept like that. Perfume of Decay was like, you know, getting older and trying to enjoy getting older, whilst also it's like, it's decay and it represents death and stuff like that. And I found like quite a lot of stuff to write about on that theme. Sort of like trying to like game my brain into like finding interesting areas to write about. And Nets to Catch the Wind is like, it's about futility. And I was watching Blue Velvet, film by David Lynch. And like, out of all his films, I would say that's the most accessible, like, weirdly. Because it's like, it's nightmarish. But compared to like Eraserhead and stuff, and even Mulholland Drive, I do think like Blue Velvet follows like the most mainstream narratives, so you can at least like kind of cling on to it. And that was honestly the first time where I was just like, oh, it's all a dream. Oh. And then you go back and watch the films, you're like, fucking hell, this is profound. And then I got into his ideas about transcendental meditation, sort of cross-pollinated with like Rick Rubin's approach to transcendental meditation. Started meditating and like just started getting into this, like trying to tap into this weird confusion, fear, joy. There's like a lot of like emotions that can almost be like rooted back to childhood emotions. In the bit where you're like confused when you're dreaming and you're like kind of a bit of awake, you're kind of asleep, there's just this like liminal passage of sleeping that's really interesting. And I started like following it, writing in that headspace. And then I ended up like getting like 20 songs in, gave it a bit of space, and then looked back on it and I was like, hang on, these are all breadcrumbs to like how I actually feel and like what I'm actually sad about, or what my brain is in the background trying to like the pieces that it's trying to put together to like understand my experiences. And then these songs ended up being like a roadmap for me to sort of try and uncover about like what I was sad about. So it was this really like wild journey of discovery, and I just lent into it. And I thought, you know, especially following a record like The Perfume of Decay, which is like very nighttime, I thought Nets to Catch the Wind being like the break of dawn is like a really good succession. And when I was able to hold that in my head, I could write loads of songs. So that was enough of like a catalyst for me to like make stuff, which is usually enough. And then, you know, like concepts are cool with records. Not all great records have them, but all Tigercub records have them.
Nice.
So that's kind of the vibe, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
sort of like
that
dreams,
does make sense. So,
know.
as you say, that it's sort of a roadmap of what's basically making you feel sad. What are there any particular tracks on the record that really like epitomise exactly how you're feeling at that point in time, and what specifically sort of drives those emotions in those tracks?
Well, like to preface that, like the reason why I write songs is because I can't articulate how I feel. So it's hard to talk about it in like a degree of depth. I'm not like just parrying away your question.
Yeah,
it's just like that's sort of how it is. But I would say like Nightmares is a really good culmination of like a lot of the themes. It's very like long form and kind of, I guess like I've heard it been described as like proggy. Not in a wanky way, but just in a kind of like, it's long form, it doesn't follow normal pop structures and stuff, and it's just very like willing to go where it needs to express an emotion or like convey something in more of like a cinematic quality. I'm a big fan of like Mickey Most. Do you know that songwriter?
No, not familiar.
You should check. You'll have heard his songs.
Yeah.
He's this guy from the 60s. He believed that like a song was like a mini movie, and like Paul McCartney and the Beatles are like, I think, really influenced by him. It's a really good train of thought to have when you're writing songs. I think it should be like a little film. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What events do we want to happen at certain times? So Nightmares really like adheres to that like mentality. And yeah, the lyrics are kind of like, yeah, they're convoluted in a way that like dreams throw up ideas. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like a carousel of things.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the latest single from the record, A Black Moon. Talk me through the single, talk me what it's about, and sonically, how did you come to that sort of sound? Because it's very, very dark, very sort of like dreamlike, nightmare-y. Like, how did you come up with that sound, and how did that like attach to the themes of the song?
Well, I'm glad you like it. It's very Deftones inspired, like rhythmically, took a lot from Abe Cunningham. And then like harmonically, it's inspired a bit by this group called Bad Flower that we toured with in the States. It's sort of like, I remember being really beguiled by their melodies and chords and stuff. And I think it's kind of influenced by that. But yeah, like very vivid, like lyrical imagery, like very referential to obviously like Eleanor Wiley, who her poetry collection Nets to Catch the Wind is we owe our album namesake to, and Edgar Allan Poe as well. And yeah, man, I was looking through like my journals and stuff that I was writing and like lyric books and stuff when I was like really trying to hash out the lyrics. And there's some like way darker lyrics that I ended up cutting. But I think it's got some cool sort of idiosyncratic, like, again, like counterpoint, like even the concept of a black moon would be invisible, but it's still there, you know? So it's just like bouncing off that and, yeah, like the black loom weaving a net to catch your dreams in sort of vibe. It's just, yeah, I wish I could give a layman's thing for what it represents, but I found those, you know, that succession of words and stuff, and like it fit, and I rolled with it. But yeah, I was reading a lot of like Vladimir Nabokov and stuff like that. I was getting like literary with it. Well, I'm not a very literary person, you know. I just like, if I can understand it and enjoy it, then it's like served its purpose for me. But I wouldn't consider myself a literary person. But at the time, I was. Shamefully, I was reading Lolita.
Interesting.
Which is, yeah, it's an amazing read on a horrific subject. Yes. But just the way that like Nabokov uses language and stuff like that. And I was reading Perfume as well. And just constantly making notes and just trying to get into like the syntax of how they tick and like how they put sentences together to just give you like the most information out of the least amount of words.
Yeah, I see.
Like pretty amazing. Cool.
And so the record is out on Friday. Once the record's out, and as we look towards the rest of this year, what have you got in store for you? What's next for Tigercub?
Well, there's a big billboard going up in Times Square on Friday, which is very special.
Exciting.
That is very exciting. So we're really happy about that. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to go out, but we're going to announce a UK tour, European tour as well. We kept like Coco exclusive as we could, but then, you know, after we did it, it just felt like right that we should like try and take that show around the UK. We're not doing like loads of dates, just like a couple. And then we're going to play Gramercy Theatre in May in New York City, Manhattan, which is going to be like Coco, but the US version. And then just sort of build it out from there. So we're just taking like a kind of exclusive approach with like our live shows and hoping that like, yeah, we can do like less shows, but the shows that we do are very special and like larger. And that gives us access to like production and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of vibe.
Yes, and if it's anything like the Coco show, I know your fans have something very, very exciting to look forward to. Brilliant. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to sell whatever you want. So if the guys and girls at home want to catch more Tigercub, get more Tigercub in their life, where can they go? What can they do?
Well, if you really want to listen to us, go on Spotify or iTunes or, well, Apple Music. Should I really list them all out? Tidal, Pandora, all like major DSPs. Go listen to it over there. If you really want to support us, you can buy limited vinyl, which always does well. It has a great resale value on Discogs. So if nothing else, it's an investment. You can grab some vinyl, and a new portal of like discovery that we're just getting into now, very like late, but Bandcamp. They've got like really fair artist rates, and you got the option to like you can buy the album digitally for really cheap, and you can pay a little bit more if you want. You can send us a nice message. It's just a very like holistic, like person to person sort of vibe. So I'd say like Bandcamp's a really good shout if you really want to like invest in Tigercub and not line our pockets or anything like that, but just give us more resources to like push ourselves further and try and deliver something that's like a higher grade of excellence, because we always try and hold ourselves, sometimes to a fault, to just a very, very high level, and we're always trying to make whatever we do better and just add value back into what we can give back to fans. I'd say Bandcamp's a really good place to reach us financially.
Brilliant. Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and coming all the way from Brighton to our studio in East London. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation, very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it too. Thank you very much. Cool. So that was Jamie Hall from Tigercub here on Shoreditch Radio, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, dude.
Great.
You're such a nice little co-pilot.
I'm glad to hear.